Hey guys, welcome to Antel Economics.
Hey guys, what's up?
And today we're back with podcast 4, and this week is a midweek special. So we've got an economic Q&A special. So we've had loads of nice questions in from you guys, and we're going to try and answer some of them today. So before we get started, obviously we've got midweek tweet of the week. So the tweet we had is the government should protect the public, not Cummings. So obviously, as you know, there's been some controversy around Dominic Cummings. He's had some questionable actions, and now people are calling for things like him to resign. So comment down below what you think he should do. Obviously, go have a look at our Twitter at Antel Economics. So let's go.
So the first question we've got is from Vishal.Prasha, and he asked, what do you feel is the most important economics objective in the UK? And this links nicely with another question we got from A1_Akan3, who says, do you think the economy will recover from the coronavirus? So, Ravi, let's start off with the first question. What do you think is the most important objective at the moment?
Personally, I think the most important one is to maintain employment. Full employment is
Yeah.
a very key macro objective to maintain at least 95% of people in employment.
Yeah.
Not just for, the happiness of businesses and firms, but obviously it gives people a sense of pride and purpose, so they feel like they're doing something every day.
Yeah, no, I'd agree with that. But because of the COVID-19 pandemic, do you think that unemployment is an effect of poor economic growth? Because obviously the pandemic has had shocks in aggregate demand and supply, and that's kind of like made the economy kind of freeze. And I think by pursuing economic growth, don't you think that economic objective will lead to a smaller rate of unemployment?
Yeah, I see your point on economic growth. I think it's important, but I feel like if we can maintain employment and if workers earn money and they consume more in the economy, that can help boost that aggregate demand, which will in turn lead to more economic growth. I do think it's definitely stunted because of coronavirus.
Yeah.
So at the forefront, I think employment and low unemployment rates alongside will help stimulate economic growth.
Yeah, no, I can see your point there. I was just thinking along the lines, demand will create employment. So if we target demand through pursuing economic growth, I thought that unemployment would recover as a consequence of that. So then that leads nicely on to Ayo's question of, do you think that the economy will recover?
Yeah, I think the economy will recover. Like eventually, everything recovers. We saw this from the 2008 financial crash. There were recoveries, but it does leave deep scars within the economy. It
Yeah,
will return, but it will take time. And obviously, everyone's aiming for this what we call a V-shaped recovery, where
yeah,
there's
yeah, yeah,
can dip GDP, but then it does shoot straight back up. But that does
yeah,
take years.
yeah.
Uh,
No, that is true.
what's your thoughts on how this will impact economic growth in the long term? Do you feel like it's now gonna people's strategies towards achieving it will change?
Well, I think in the long term, I think we can all agree that it will definitely recover. I mean, we're not going to stay in this state forever.
Yeah.
And as soon as this pandemic goes back, I do think that our recovery phase will be quicker than other financial crises, purely because people's confidence in terms of consumers aren't that affected. It's the fact that they're enabled to consume. So I think that V-shaped recovery is something that will happen, and it will happen once the pandemic is taken care of.
Yeah. So do you think like once the pandemic is over, people will now have a sort of sense to splurge their money, try and spend more because they've just been locked up all these past 2 months?
Yeah, no, definitely. I think that is
Yeah.
definitely the case. Like people through the furlough scheme or like their private companies paying the money regardless, they're getting money, but they're having limited chances to spend it. And people are sick of lockdown, let's be honest. So once it's lifted, we're going to see, like, I think, a huge recovery in local economies.
Yeah. Okay. Brilliant. So next question is from Aaron.K_. Will free markets help correct the COVID-19 pandemic at all?
Um, yeah, obviously, I think that is the free market mechanism that is going to drive economic growth once the pandemic is over. You know, demand for goods will go up. Consequently, supply for these goods will have to go up. And I think that kind of shift in equilibrium is going to drive growth in post-pandemic.
Yeah, so I think free markets could be beneficial, but what about government intervention? As you just mentioned, the furlough scheme and things like that. In a free market scenario, you wouldn't have that intervention. You wouldn't have these consumers still maintaining their income so they can pay things that they need to pay for, like their food.
Yeah, yeah, no, obviously I agree. I mean, that was the whole point of Keynesian economics, following the Great Depression. The free market failed to correct the market in a short enough time limit. So there needed to be intervention. And I guess you could say that without intervention here, the healthcare system, the unemployment system, everything will be in a bad state. So we do need intervention. But I do believe that because people are so ready to get out of lockdown, the natural desire for everyone to consume and to spend their money will drive growth. And so the free markets will correct the kind of slump that we've been in so far.
Yeah, I think that's a good point. I think the free market will have a role to play. People's desires will be very important.
Yeah.
But short term, I think the government's done really good in intervening and just providing a bit more stability within the
Yeah,
economy.
yeah.
Obviously, things like the national debt has gone through the roof, but at least they provided, some support to the public.
Yeah, yeah. No, I agree. It is the free markets are necessary, but the intervention, especially in pandemic situations, is very much needed for economies.
Yeah.
So the next question we've got is from Sakit_Agrawal02, who has written, do you support trickle-down economics?
Now, I have a bit of a sticky view on this one, so I don't really see the great beneficial of trickle down economics. Like, obviously, it's good to give a lot of money to firms and stuff, and then it goes down to the people. But I think if the government just gave a lot of support to the individual local businesses, I think that would drive them to do better in a sense, and it wouldn't get lost within the system of the whole big firms.
Yeah, no, I agree with that. But I would also say that in times like these, it's not the consumer confidence that's being affected the most. I'd say it's business confidence, because obviously businesses don't want to invest in a time like this.
Yeah.
So by kind of employing trickle down economics, we're giving power to the firms to go back to how they were operating beforehand. And the subsidies that we might provide, the tax incentives, it will drive the companies to go back to how they were before, and some of the profits will then be fed back to the workers of the company. They're not going to be as affected, and I think that it steps towards putting back the economy that we once had.
Yeah, I think it would play a nice vital role in a situation like this pandemic, to help support those big firms who obviously do make up a large proportion of the economy. We want them to invest. We want, like we think back to the first question, we want that economic growth to improve and increase.
Yeah.
But I do think outside of a pandemic scenario, I think giving more incentives to small businesses to, take the courage, take their belief, and to innovate more and try and compete with the bigger firms is only better for the economy. More innovation and more consumption is only a good thing.
Yeah, no, that's right. Yeah, I mean, obviously you can evaluate that with the idea that, maybe the firms, they take the profit but they don't reinvest it. I mean, the whole principle is based on the fact that the firms will reinvest into their production, into their workers. But if that doesn't happen, then it poses a question. It's just a waste of money, isn't it?
Yeah, do you not think that, like, big firms, in a time like this where there is a lot of uncertainty, if they then don't feel the confidence to reinvest, why wouldn't they just take the money? Why wouldn't shareholders take their portion?
No, I would say that in a time like this is when they would be looking to invest into their company the most, not for the fear of not for looking out for profits, but because they want to support their production line. They want to support their business from going under. So I don't think they'd take it into their own pockets. I think they'd use the money to implement processes which will enable them to go back to normal.
Yeah, so inevitably they just support and they replace the capital, which is, old and broken.
Yeah.
Okay, brilliant. So we've got another question from Aranab_27. In what ways is the economic crisis we are facing now worse than the 2008 crisis?
Right. So to start off with, obviously the very obvious answer is that this involves lives at a much larger scale than the 2008 crisis. I mean, people are dying. And for the 2008 crises, I'd say it was more a demand-led crisis. And although this pandemic is preventing people from spending, so demand is affected, I think supply is also largely affected in this crisis too.
Yeah, I think there's been a massive supply and stock up. There's been the firms and businesses can't remove their products. They can't sell their goods and services because everyone's locked up. Their shops are shut. So
Yeah,
that is a big problem. The stockpile up. Also, I think another problem is that national debt is really it's bigger than it was in 2008. I think the national debt currently hasn't been this bad in about 57 years.
yeah, yeah,
And it's now nearly something like 97.7% of the entire UK economy. So
yeah,
it's heavily and quickly heaping up, and I
yeah,
think that is going to be something that affects the UK in the long term as well.
yeah. But in terms of the crises, like obviously we talked about the stock supplies as well, but you also need to think about the workers. People they are not able to go to work, like the manufacturing industries in Manchester, Leeds, in the UK. They're those kind of areas that are reliant on people going to the factories. They can't work from home. That it's going to cause supply shocks all around the world, and it is something that it was not seen in the 2008 crisis as much.
Yeah, I think obviously this has impacted a lot more lives in the 2008 crisis, like you
Yeah,
said. The manufacturing industry has been heavily affected. I think quite a lot of the service industry, the tech-based stuff, some of it can be done at home to an extent,
hmm,
which is beneficial for them. It is an advantage characteristic.
yeah,
But no, I think especially in lower income countries, less developed countries who don't have that tertiary work, and it's mainly manufacturing industries, it's quite dangerous, for them to be working,
yeah.
even if they can't work, to not have that income. It's going to heavily affect them. It's going
Yeah,
to
no,
increase
that is
poverty.
true. Yeah. Right. Okay. So the next question we've got is from David_K, who has written, "How has colonialism affected the spread of economic wealth today?"
Well, I think it's affected it massively. To be honest, the UK had massive colonies all over the world. One
Yeah.
noticeably being was India,
Yeah.
and the effect has been that it's meant that India has lagged behind the UK in its economy. It's meant that there's been increased levels of poverty there. There's been,
Yeah.
the way that it was left has meant that it's not as developed. The infrastructures aren't there. The healthcare system isn't there, and
Yeah. No.
therefore, yeah. So
Yeah.
therefore, the economic wealth is just a lot poorer in countries like those.
I was just gonna say that obviously I agree with you, but you could also argue maybe not India as such, but other regions as well. The British in invading those countries, they did bring new infrastructure there. They did bring new kind of not democratic, but they brought new systems of change, which these countries might have employed to develop their economies once the colonialism has ended. And like in India, they put the train tracks there, the roads, the ports, all of these things that India could use to develop in the future. So arguably, maybe not in India, but other countries which have experienced similar kind of
Yeah.
changes, they would have been able to use these things that Britain or other colonialist countries have left to develop their economies further.
Yeah, I think they could use them, but I still think they're still at a massive disadvantage. They've been held back all these years. They've just been sort of held whilst the UK has grown a massive gap, economically, a massive wealth
Yeah,
gap away from, say, just as an example, India, and has become so much more developed. And so once India gained their freedom, that gap is a massive gap to fill in, which I
yeah,
think,
yeah,
though they've provided a few things, isn't exactly, worthy of what they've technically done. They've
yeah,
stunted their.
yeah. No, I agree. I agree. That is true. Yeah.
Yeah. So if we go on to the last question, we've got Lasith_Siri. So to what extent do you think coronavirus will stop globalization?
Right. So obviously, coronavirus is forcing people into lockdown, businesses closing, consumption going down. People are demanding goods far less than they were before. So the demand for imports are much less. You know, we're seeing demand shocks all around the world. So I think globalization is being affected by the pandemic in a negative way. But having said that, I would say that the reliance on tech companies, you know, the connectivity that we're getting, the online workspaces, the entertainment industry in terms of streaming, that's all coming up. And I think that is an example of how globalization is improving because of the pandemic.
Yeah, well, I think globalization, just to build on your point, is something that the firms do to ensure that they can increase their profits and to make their factors of production cheaper. I think it's a good idea. Obviously, it was a good idea to help make lots of money for many businesses. I think the problem is that they will realize now that, especially with these supply build-ups, that they may have goods shipped from, say, China, which were 2 months ago, and then a lot enforces, and they just have a build-up of supply, and they've got nowhere to store it. So they're suffering because they've got nowhere to move these products, because they obviously were in the seas before coronavirus and the lockdown was actually enforced. And now they've got a massive problems on their hands where they need to get rid of this product.
In terms of the recovery phase of corona, I think, don't you think that globalization is going to see an acceleration in kind of growth?
I'm not sure. I could see it maybe not having an acceleration. I could see maybe businesses looking for more local places. You know, for the UK to have many of its goods shipped from China, it's quite a distance. I could see them maybe looking at more local regions and maybe looking at maybe quality over the price on some goods and items. So, you know, shipping from places like Germany, where they have a very, very high quality of goods, compared to China, where the cost is very low.
Yeah, no, that is a valid point. But I still think that China will have, like, firms, they just can't immediately, you know, choose quality over price. They, especially now when businesses are experiencing losses, they're going to have to take into account the price of the goods that they import.
Yeah.
So I think the movement out of China is going to be hard to facilitate in the given conditions.
So you think that there will be more globalization around?
Yeah. I think like we're seeing it with the tech companies, we're seeing it with different entertainment companies. We are becoming more reliant on technology, and I think technology is an avenue of connectivity. And as we increase the amount of tech we incorporate in the world, globalization will only increase.
Yeah. Do you think many other countries, say, like, let's say take the UK for example, could revive their manufacturing industries in some areas to maybe not be so reliant on imports?
Yeah, I think especially with Brexit.
Yeah.
Especially with Brexit, we're gonna have to, you know, the trade regulations are going to change. UK in specific, I think, are going to be a more independent economy. I think we will have to divert some of our resources into manufacturing our own goods rather than importing. So yeah, I think for the UK, yes, globalization in that sense might go down, but I still think the reliance on technology is too strong that globalization would just have to go up, only up.
Yeah, I do. I have to say, technology is taking over the world, and it has been doing so for the past, you know, many decades now, and now it is really enforcing itself on the world.
Yeah. So yeah, that was our last question. If you guys have any other questions that you'd like to be heard, please do comment down below what you think, and it could potentially be a future podcast title. Who knows?
If you like this video, please comment down below, like, subscribe, and comment. So yeah, see you guys soon.
See you guys soon. Bye.
Bye.